Good evening for everybody on both sides of the border and wherever else you are watching this. It is a Thanksgiving Monday in Canada. So happy holidays to all my fellow Canucks, people who've been home, doing whatever. Hope you enjoyed it, had some turkey, whatnot. The one coming up for the Americans, that's great too. We'll try and do an edition that day as well. I'd like to throw one up on the holidays for all the people who just don't celebrate holidays. Today, we are going to be speaking to author Sara Cleveland. Hello, Sara.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Pretty good. So let's go through a couple of basics here. I always ask everybody when they go in, especially, it's another author, because it's mainly authors watching this stuff, to go in and support everyone to go share their stuff. So let's go and give everybody a little background about the author, Sara Cleveland. Right. So we go to Amazon. Quite a few titles here we can pick from the beginning. Saving the Dragon, Bared Magic, Counting the Dragon. Are these running in a series, because I see the name Dragon more than once?
Yes, so Saving the Dragon and Courting the Dragon are the first two books of my Penelope's Dragon series. The third book is yet forthcoming. And then Bared Magic is the start of a second series, which is the Woodland Curses.
Okay, cool. And I see you do reviews. Are these just in general for what you like, for what you've read? Do you try and put them out for friends, just for books you're interested in? How do you usually run with those?
So most of the reviews I write for my blog are books that I've come across in the Twitter writing community for the most part.
Okay.
I'm privileged to call some of those authors friends, and then some of them I don't know very well or don't know at all. So it just kind of depends. But I get most of my book recommendations off of Twitter these days.
You know what? I've been there. I've been there for about 2 years. I really stepped it up before the beginning of the summer. For me, anyway, something we can talk about now. I had a couple questions about it. I just find it's the most reliable social media to do. I've tried to narrow my searches to like-minded people or people like you. And again, we're not the best of friends, but we've talked a couple times. So I'd say we're Twitter acquaintances, but there are some people there who are writers who've become very good friends who've helped me out a lot. Have you experienced kind of the same thing?
Yeah, Twitter is for sure my favorite social media. I have Facebook, but it's kind of like obligatory.
Yeah.
And I started Instagram this year. Also kind of like obligatory. I am enjoying them.
From your own point of view, or just in general to keep things out there?
So Facebook feels obligatory because of IRL friends and family, but okay. Instagram felt more like everybody's doing it. You need to be on more than one social media, blah, 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 blah. So it felt.
Sorry, your hair keeps disappearing because of your green screen. You have hair and then you don't. No, you don't have to put up right. You have hair and then you don't have hair. That's why I wasn't laughing at you. I was laughing at the hair.
Yeah, I was playing before the call started. I was playing with the background because I was trying to get my book cover or something behind me. And
I was trying to do the same and it didn't work. So you just got the back of my room here.
Yeah, so but the call started and I had it blurred.
Oh, jeez.
So now it's blurry and I don't know.
No, not at all. Not at all. You find a lot of use out of Instagram? Because a quick little story, mine, it just seemed to get inundated with every bot account in the world. And then when I tried to clean them all out and get rid of them, then I was told that there was suspicious activity. Locked mine. They always say, okay, you need a code to go in. You go to get the code and it just jumps back to the first page that says I need the code. So I gave up on it.
Yeah, I haven't had that problem. Instagram's been okay. It's definitely more active for me than my page on Facebook. Mm-hmm. Definitely more activity. The only thing I have, I've been debating whether or not to try TikTok, because a lot of people are saying they're having good luck with book talk and things like that. But I'm not a video person. I tried. I made a good run at YouTube. I have several video reviews on YouTube. And they're so time consuming, which is why I don't do them anymore. Not the filming's not bad, but the editing is horrendously bad. I'm a perfectionist. So I look at TikTok and I'm I don't know if I could do that. One, I don't think I'm creative enough in that way. And two, I think I'm too much of a perfectionist to like try to do the quick things. Like I've been thinking about trying to do some like reels on Instagram and stuff like that, which is kind of the same thing. And I'm like, I'm just not a video person.
From my POV, I personally think I'm too old for TikTok, and I don't want to look like a fool. It's always been my thing. I don't have a problem doing these interviews and all this and all that. And like most social media, a lot of the things that I've seen catch on TikTok, again, no insult to you, you look like a pretty lady, but it's these little 18, 19-year-old girls dancing around. And that's not me. And no one's paying to see me dance around.
There's like some other authors in my genre in particular who have been doing book talk successfully. And I mean, they're my age or older, but some of them have like backgrounds in the performing arts or, you know, things that just make them more suited to that sort of medium. Whereas like Twitter, I can just sit there and throw out random tweets all day until I get something that for some reason 2,000 people think is interesting. I'm always perplexed about the tweets that like get the high engagement. Like they're never the thing you want to get engagement. They're always the most random thing. Most recently, my t-shirt, that tweet blew up like ridiculous for whatever reason.
I cut mine in 3 areas. I try and do reviews that I've had. I try and do like content material, so you vaguely understand what the book is like, but you don't. And then I'll give you something directly out of the book, so you can say, oh, I want to go read this. And I've done ones where there's literally been like 4,000 or 5,000 people responding. And then I've had other ones that I'm like, man, I crafted this and I went through it, and you get like 2 responses.
Yep.
So again, as far as that goes, I don't know what the answer is. I don't think anyone does.
It's always the ones that I spend a lot of time on, and I think are like, and they're just nothing.
I don't think that's ever going to change. You were saying earlier. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, and then the one with like the massive like typo in it is the one that like goes viral.
I had one that I took down that I actually had like at least a dozen people say, "Why'd you take it down?" There was a massive typo in how I spelled Niagara Falls. I've lived here for 99% of my life. I should not have misspelled Niagara Falls. And people were going back and saying, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? I'm like, I took it down. It looked horrible.
I think I've misspelled Cleveland in a tweet.
Maybe, like, and not because you've misspelled it, but because of using a keyboard or whatever.
Yeah.
Or you tried to autocorrect. It happens.
But like, I mean, Cleveland hasn't been my name all my life, like in my defense, but like I've lived in Ohio all my life. I ought to like Northeast Ohio. Like I should be able to spell Cleveland. I've definitely misspelled it in a tweet. But that's always what it is.
So where are we putting you on the genre style list? You mentioned that a minute ago. Where do you think that most of your writing falls in?
So all of my published work right now would fall into fantasy romance. I would say that Penelope's Dragon falls more towards the fantasy. Like romance is a strong element, but it leans more towards the fantasy, whereas the Woodland Curses are definitely legitimately genre romance with, you know, fantasy fairy tale elements. So I'm on that spectrum. I do have stuff I'm working on that is not romance genre. I have some like epic fantasy I'm working on, and even some sci-fi stuff that's on the back burner. But that stuff is actually a lot harder to write and takes a lot more time to write for me personally. So it's all work in progress.
People will tell you, oh, it's not so hard, it's not so this, it's not so that. I know the areas that I write in, and I look at other people's stuff and I say, man, I don't know if I'd be able to do that. And then, you know, exactly what you were just saying. Some people think it's really difficult, but I guess if it's your passion or it's what you're known for, it's what you do, you can do it awfully quickly. I mean, I wouldn't be able to write, you know, one of these YA novels or some of the stuff that's out there. I have no frame of reference for it. And then there's a couple of, you know, I don't want to denigrate anybody, mention any names, but there's a couple of people out there that seem to be like whipping one off every couple of months. And some of them are really good. So again, I've always found that fascinating. If people are going to step outside of their area, because I have no intent on stepping outside of mine anytime soon.
Well, I can tell you'll never get a mystery novel out of me, cozy or otherwise.
There you go.
Like my brain just doesn't work that way, and I don't read a lot of it. Like, honestly, I know I've read some mystery books, but like the only mystery book I can think of the only ones I think off the top of my head are like Agatha Christie. Like, it's not my genre. I don't particularly enjoy reading it. I mean, I've read good ones that are really good, but like if I'm looking for a book, not what my grandmother, on the other hand, loves mystery books.
Oh yeah, my father plows through them.
I will never write one, because that is not how my brain works. I am in awe of people who can write a mystery book or a suspense thriller or anything like that, because no, my muse runs the other direction. I tried to do, like, when I was writing Courting the Dragon originally, I had this big like mystery plot twist thing. That book had like multiple personality disorder as far as genre goes in the original plot outline, but which I shouldn't. That's a whole other thing. I'm a pantser. Plotting did not work for me.
No,
but I had to throw out the whole original plot, because I could not pull it off, because I am not a mystery writer. So I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna play to my strengths, which is writing a fantasy romance, because that's what this should be. And I did a lot of like there was some stuff that I'm writing, and like as I'm writing the scene, I'm thinking, this sounds like Regency romance, and that is not what I am writing. So there were whole scenes and I'm just like, nope, wrong genre, chuck it out.
I think if you're putting some of that in there, I don't see any problem with that at all. It's just that if it veers too much away from it and you're advertising it, or even fooling yourself to say, no, it's this, that's where the problem comes in.
Yeah. Well, and that's where, like, there were chunks of the book that legitimately seemed like a different genre than the other chunks of the book. No. And I'm like, nope, exit out, throw it away.
Could you use them for something else, maybe?
They weren't even that interesting. Like, they were like dreadfully boring. Like, did I completely delete the picnic scene? I think I completely deleted the picnic scene. There was this convoluted picnic scene that I'm like, I don't know why I wrote it to begin with. It was dreadfully dull. Like, as I was writing it, I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? But it was in the plot outline.
But again, what you were saying before, you never know who's going to come back and like that. There were two scenes when we were doing the editing for my first one that I fought to have left in. And both the people that were helping me said the one doesn't even make any sense. And I'm like, it's going to make sense when we finish the book. It's going to make sense when we go through everything. And I'm a firm believer in sometimes standing up for that stuff and saying, no, it's staying in. Because that one little part, and I don't want to ruin it for you, because how you were saying how far you haven't come to it yet, I've had at least a handful of people tell me that's my favorite section of the book. So again, if you feel that strongly about it, that it works, leave it in. If what you're saying, like this just, this sucks, and maybe it's time to pull it out.
Yeah, there's an author that I follow. Like, I've been reading her advice articles for years, Holly Lyle, and like one of the big pieces of advice that you find frequently in her stuff is like, if you are bored writing it, your reader is going to be bored reading it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, excuse me. So what can you tell us about your series? Excuse me, sorry. What can you tell us about your series without giving too much away so people will buy your books?
So which one? The Dragon series? Or
let's start with those, sure.
Okay. So the Dragon series. It's Penelope's Dragon. I started it back in 2015. Okay. So the first book was a Nano project. It's a National Novel Writing Month for those who may not be aware. And
I've never done it.
I've won it exactly once, which was when I wrote Save the Dragon, awesome. Actually. And then that kind of the series kind of ballooned from there. But the basic premise is that the main character, Penelope, she is a magic user herself, but she falls in love with this young man who's not exactly what he seems, and it is really hard to describe the first book without like
that's okay.
The plot twist.
I always like people to tell a little bit, because like we were saying before we turned the camera on, I always kind of like to do these in two parts. I have a lot of my own reading from you guys to catch up, but I like to try and give people an outline and a sketch, and then we come back and we say, well, here's what I thought.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. The characters originated though they originated as NPCs in a D&D campaign that I ended up never actually running the campaign because I realized I liked the NPCs way too much to let my players ruin them. So I ripped the characters out of their context, reworked them, built a world for them, and then plugged it in. So there's a part of the book with the side characters, Tiffany and Eric, that would have been like what the player characters would have been dealing with had I actually ever run the D&D campaign. So that's just like a fun tidbit about that one.
What has a bigger influence, the characters over the book or the book over the characters as far as your gaming? Like, are you purposely trying to take things from the game and insert them into the books, or is it just a happy coincidence when it does?
No, so I got rid of I pulled the characters out and like.
Oh, okay, all of them. Okay.
Yeah. So I tried to divorce completely from like. There's nothing from D&D in it.
Okay.
I mean, at least nothing that isn't common to like medieval European fantasy, basically.
Okay.
So I built my own world, my own magic system.
Wow.
All that. So not D&D, but that's where the characters originated was as NPCs for a D&D campaign. So so the plot resembles like the backstory of the original campaign.
Okay.
So yeah, it just decided that I was far more interested in writing that backstory with the NPCs than I was actually running the game. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna take these characters I love so much, pull them out of their context and write them a story. And then that somehow spiraled into 3 books. So.
Cool. So are you having as far as like, I've always been really, it's personally not something I read a lot of when you talk about the D&D and all that, but I've had to research it because a lot of writers that I talked about have done it. When you are creating your own world, obviously, not to be insulting at all, but they always tell us there's nothing new. Are you trying to build everything from scratch, or is there a basis of somebody else's work you've looked at and said, maybe I could make this my own, or maybe I could change this? Were you more happy with just saying, boom, we're going to start it from the beginning? So
I tend to look at like real world cultures typically when I'm building out a world. I tend to take influences from the real world, not so much D&D. I try to make things my own, and I like think about, well, what spin can I put on this concept? Although that can also bite you too, because like, I had a beta reader who was very upset that my characters did not adhere perfectly to like the etiquette of the British nobility, for example. And I'm like, they're not in Britain. Like, yeah, that's the model that I model a lot of stuff off of, because that's kind of I don't want to say it's a standard trope for the genre, but it's kind of a standard trope for the genre. Yeah. So of course I modeled off of that, but it's my world. If I don't want them to do this thing, then they're not going to do that thing, and I might have a legitimate world building reason for that.
It just seems like the world that you're in, and again, don't take this the wrong way, I'm not trying to pick a fight with anybody, it seems that everybody simultaneously loves everything and hates everything.
Oh yeah. You are. So the thing about the fantasy genre and fantasy romance is no exception to this. There's always going to be somebody who loves what you do, and there's always going to be somebody who vehemently hates it.
Oh, and no, that's true.
And it doesn't matter what it is.
But with your writing, it almost seems like it's 50-50. Not you, but in this area, it almost seems like it's 50-50.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you're always going to get dissenters. You're always going to get, this book sucks, don't read this book. You're always going to get somebody, it's the greatest thing I ever read. But for the area that you're in, it honestly almost seems like it's 50-50, where it's like, boom.
I mean, that's true. That's true of like anything in fantasy, honestly. Like I don't know why, but the other day I was going through the Goodreads reviews on one of my it was one of my favorite fantasy books back in middle school. So and I was going through it. I mean, this is a big time author who's written I don't even know how many books at this point. It had one adapted into a TV series. I think MTV adapted it. And I'm going through the reviews, and there are people who are just like, this book is awful. It's a ripoff of Tolkien and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, okay, I can see the Tolkien inspiration, because like 90% of fantasy at one point was like, inspired. But I'm like, I wouldn't consider it a straight ripoff. Like it was, so there were like a lot of things, and I'm like, did we read the same book? Yeah. But like, I mean, that can happen to an author who is wildly successful and has written, there's probably 30 books in that series. I don't know. It's a ridiculous number of books. I lost count of books in that series. So I mean, there's always going to be somebody who hates it, who thinks whatever you've done is overdone. And the thing is, like, in fantasy in particular, I feel like it's not avoiding tropes. It's not even necessarily subverting tropes. It's how do you execute the trope? I think is really what it boils down to. And Saving the Dragon is a little bit of a trope fest, but look, I wrote it that way. I was just having fun with it. And then I self-published it on a lark back in 2015. Had no idea what I was doing, like zero idea what I was doing. And you can see that when you read the book. Like, I'm not proud of it, but like, I recognize that, hey, it was a first attempt at doing a very hard thing. And like, I personally think that Courting the Dragon is a much better effort. Granted, it took me 6 years to write it. I went through a divorce and a bunch of other stuff, and just I tried plotting the book, which was a mistake. And I learned a lot about my writing process during that time, and I think it's a better book. It's a much longer book for sure.
I'm in no way, shape, or form a woe is me guy or the world's out to get me guy, but looking at the first one and then realizing everything that should have been done and preparing the second one, now I can see that, like, there's a million things in the first one that pissed me off. That people say, that's not a big deal. And you're like, no, it's a big fucking deal. You want to go back and change all of it.
Yeah, but I think a lot of authors feel that way.
I don't think there's one of us who hasn't had at least a line.
I think there are some people out there who are actually arrogant enough to think that their first book is perfect.
And it comes back to the Twitter thing. I've met you guys. I'm sure you've seen some of the same names that pop up on mine all the time. Gene McLeod, Jesse Franco, they're great. And every now and then you'll take a shot at somebody, or you'll take a stab at somebody. Maybe they don't think it's funny, and then I'll back off and not do it. But all the vitriol and all the anger and all the stuff that they say it's on Twitter, maybe it's just me. Maybe I've let it bounce off me, but that's part of the reason why I left Facebook. Everybody on Facebook just hated everybody, and nobody was making any effort to help me with anything. So, and I don't want to live like that. I'm not being angry over some guy, that I've never met on Facebook. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
I would like to do this. Thank you so much for your time. If you want to come back in a little bit, because again, I've got my to be read list that is a mile long. And what I would also like to do is, once, not a big rush, when you have time to finish mine, if you want to come on and throw a couple of words about mine. That's how we usually do the second one. We'll do like 80% you and like 20% me.
Sounds good.
All right, fantastic. Stick around for a second after I turn this off. Everybody is 32 all the way. Again, if you're still celebrating Canadian Thanksgiving, have a good time, and I'll see everybody soon. Thank you.